All right, so today we're going to talk about the new final now DOL Fiduciary Rule. Maybe if you can just start with what was the motivation of the DOL behind this rule and what was their motivation with some of the changes that they've laid out in this rule?
Well, to understand the rule, Rick, you really got to kind of go back in time a little bit. This really started in 2009, so it's at least 6, 7 years in the making. And the whole premise of this rule, and I want to be clear about this because there's so much in the industry to talk about it, and there's so many articles pushed out. But if you're a plan sponsor, the rule I really think doesn't have a huge impact on the way you approach your plan today. But there is some. So just looking back at it, it's 1,100 pages. It's a ton of preambles, which is a fancy word the DOL uses for explaining why they're doing what they're doing. It's a lot of exemptions, a lot of technical stuff. But really the meat and potatoes of what plan sponsors need to digest is a small portion. But if you want to know what got us here, why we're here, it really started 5, 6, 7 years ago when the Department of Labor decided that when it comes to the advice given to plan sponsors, that there are folks out there who are selling products and are conflicted in the type of advice they're giving, rather than trying to give advice that's in the best interest of the advisee or their advice recipient. And as we've talked about, and as a lot of folks know, when you're an ERISA fiduciary, you have to provide recommendations and advice that are in the best interest of the person you're giving it to. And there was all kinds of loopholes and things in the way that the law was written that allowed a lot of folks to essentially give advice that's not in the best interest of the recipient, to sell them in a product that gave them the highest return or the highest compensation. So that really is what the DOL was trying to solve for, making sure that everybody giving advice out there was doing so in the best interest of who they're giving the advice to.
That doesn't sound like a good outcome. People getting advice that is in their best interest.
It's not, and that's what the whole reason we have pension protection laws and ERISA in the first place is that we needed to protect the investors, and the investors in this case are plan participants, and they're not, for the most part, sophisticated investment professionals or experts. They're blue-collar workers. They're folks that are on factory lines, that are folks that are office workers. They're folks doing the day-to-day jobs that they have. But the unfortunate nature of the 401k system is it presumes that they are experts as well. And it presumes that plan sponsors are experts as well. And so this is a protection out there that's going to try to give everybody that same kind of fiduciary protection when they get advice.
Let's maybe break this into two things. From an employer perspective, what should they be aware of as it relates to some of the changes in the rule? And then the second part of that would be, from an employee perspective, what changes for them? What is going to be different once this goes into effect?
So from the employer's perspective, let me talk about the rule in 3 parts, and then I'll talk about how it affects both employers and employees. The rule, I think, for those parties is important on 3 fronts. First, it redefines how somebody gets advice and what falls under the whole definition of advice.
When you say somebody, is that an employer, employee, or both?
So it's both now. So as of the old way, prior to this rule, it was generally dealt with plan sponsors. Plan sponsors who paid for advice on how to invest their assets or what to do with their plan. Generally, that advice was going to be subject to the fiduciary rule, meaning it has to be in the best interest, right? This new rule will take that a step further and now apply that.